What's up, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Friday Sessions. This was a really interesting pod. We started off with a deep dive into some extremely alarming data coming out of Australia this week from CoreLogic, the future of the country, how we are on track to require a new Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane within the next 40 years, and what that's going to mean to property prices. Another 8 million people coming to the country, according to the government report just released, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we go deep into that. Eric then asked us all a very simple question. What would you do if you had no money right now, knowing that we are going into another booming property market? We share a report that said that next year in 2026 is estimated that growth in Australian real estate will be between 8 and 15%. And most of that is going to be at the low end of the first home buyer market, which is kind of scary for first home buyers who are already struggling to get in the market. So Eric asked us, how would we position if we had no money and we were trying to take advantage of that to create wealth for our families? Very, very interesting discussion. We then moved on to time management at the end, and how Eric revealed some very interesting personal data about his own life and use of social media, which really is revealing as to why so many people are not getting ahead. And we shared some tools that we're now using ourselves to massively limit our exposure to social media. And then we talked right at the very, very end around some outstanding returns that we are achieving in alternative assets and strategies. Mark shared one trade that in 3 weeks is up 180%. I share something that I've just started doing with a 22% per month return, and how I got involved in it and so on. So I think you'll find it very, very interesting. Stay till the end because a lot of gold right there as well. Drop a like, drop a comment. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Friday Sessions. I'm here with the awesome trio of Mark, Eric, and James. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. What is going on, Eric? I'll check in with you first. You're good, mate? What's happening?
Yeah, very good, man. Just busy, you know, and when you're busy and there's always something to do, that's me at the moment. Juggling a few plates, spinning a few plates, I should say, at the moment. But all very exciting stuff. And I've got my parents here from overseas. They've been here for a couple of weeks now, so we've been taking them around. And it's just been good, man. Spoiling them, to be honest with you. It's just
it's been good thing.
Yeah, great.
Have you been chasing the bus anymore?
You know what? No, but I get my daughter yesterday goes, Dad, do you know, mentions a girl's name from soccer. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, she just seen you on the bus today. She thinks you're famous. The bus, funny enough, the contract comes up in a month, I think. And I'm umming and ahhing because it's about $2,500 a month, right? Some people think it's expensive. Some people think, oh, that's not as bad as what I thought. But the beauty of it, we're actually on one bus, but it looks like we're on multiple buses because it goes all over the Gold Coast. So the perception is we're on 10 buses.
Yeah.
So I'm juggling the idea on whether we keep going with it or not, because I think it's just a cool little thing. So
can you Photoshop in that like 5 o'clock shaver I run at the moment, some fucking age lines and a few sleepless nights in there.
I don't. Yeah, that's the problem.
And that bag of coke that Mark's got over his right shoulder that's on the French train.
That's an inside joke for anyone that doesn't know. I'm sure Adam will explain.
If you haven't watched the news, for those of you on audio, you're probably thinking, what the hell? So Mark had a tissue on the counter behind him, but it's a little nod to our week in the news cycle with our leaders in Europe potentially having a little bump on the train.
Yeah. What was it? French Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, and whoever the other guy was on a 9-hour trip back from visiting Zelensky.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Apparently Zelensky likes to partake in parties, but I don't know.
Yeah. You got to pump the troops up somehow, mate. And shovel the Colombian and get after it.
I'll tell you what's interesting. Though, right? We don't know. We don't know what was on the table. And if anyone hasn't seen it, just go look up
Macron cocaine.
Macron cocaine. Just type in Macron cocaine. We don't know what was on the table. Maybe it was a tissue, and I don't know what the straw was for, but anyway. But what I thought was interesting was
Turn it up, Mark, as if you don't know what the straw is for.
Every single mainstream media organization was basically quick to kind of pour cold water on the story and to kind of explain that, you know, the French have said that it was just a tissue and that was it, right? But if that was Trump, or if that was someone that you know, was a public enemy, how hard they would have gone on that story. I mean, think about the Elon Musk when they said that he was doing the Hitler sign. Like, if that was Elon Musk, think about the headlines that would have been. You know, I just thought that was interesting anyway, but we'll never know.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time in war-torn countries. It's a great book for those of you interested in this stuff, not the cocaine stuff, but the war stuff. I read a book called Blitzed, which is such a fascinating true story. I learned about it on the Joe Rogan show, and it's about basically how Hitler was a drug addict all the way through World War II, and how all the troops were high on meth. It's a true story. It's absolutely fascinating book if you want to read it. But
that was their secret weapon until it kind of caught up on them, right? Like,
yeah, it was a secret weapon to invading and all that. It's very interesting. But anyway, let's move on from that stuff and get into the week in business and finance and maybe a little bit of politics. I wanted to throw some red meat on the table at the start of the pod for us to discuss. Although I'm all the way here in Cyprus, I still listen to Australian press for the purposes of seeing what's going on back home. And I heard a very, very interesting interview on 2GB with a guy called Leith Van Onselen, who's the chief economist for macrobusiness.com.au. Really interesting guy. And he started off talking about a report out of CoreLogic this week that showed that the average dwelling in Australia, whether it's a unit, a house, a townhouse, whatever, is now $1 million. And that in the CoreLogic report, this now puts Australia in the worst housing affordability crisis in the history of the country. Whether you're renting or buying, there has never been a bigger percentage of your salary required to service a mortgage or pay your rent than right now today. Now, this is really nothing new for a lot of people. Before I dive into the rest of these stats for the listeners, I want you to understand a very basic premise, which I think we all agree on, although governments will try and tell us that, the problem is the supply side. It's the damn builders won't build them fast enough, or they're too. Real estate primarily, and most things are driven by supply. It's the supply side that's a real challenge in Australia. And I want to share these numbers that were in this interview. Australia, since 2000, the year 2000, this century, we are the number one in the developed world, highest growth population on the planet. We've grown 46% since 2000. We've added 8.7 million people to our population in just 24 years. So that is
percentage?
What's that?
What percentage of that is birth versus immigration?
I don't know the breakdown. But we are the highest in the world. Now, when you think about that from a housing point of view, that's one thing, but you've also got to keep up with the infrastructure, 46% in 24 years. Labor released their projections in December of how many more new Australians we are expected in the next 40 years. The number that was in this report is 13.5 million new Australians, predominantly through immigration, in the next 40 years. So that's like adding Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne to our country's population in the next 40 years from an infrastructure and housing point of view, that's got to be impossible. Surely we can't build another, maybe the Chinese could do it, but I don't think Australians could do it. A few other factors I want to point out here. Construction costs up 40% since COVID, which we've talked about previously. We have labour shortages because they're all being sucked into infrastructure projects as the governments scramble to try and keep up on the infrastructure side. So they're sort of, they're saying, the house is on fire because, of the builders, but they're also the arsonist. So they're the policemen and they're the firemen and the arsonist in this situation. Mark, you were going to say something?
Yeah, Adam, what did you say? Can you just repeat the, and I'm leading to something here. Can you repeat the increase in population, the percentage, and over what time?
46%, or 8.7 million more people in Australia in the last 24 years. And projecting forward in the next 40, we are expected to welcome another 13.5 million people to the country, which is like adding Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. So what he's basically...
Peter Thiel has mentioned this multiple times in podcasts and interviews. He said that there's a significant disparity between population growth and housing affordability. He says he notes that in cities where the population increases by 10%, so just 10%, if you increase population in a city by 10%, housing prices can surge by approximately 50%, while wages do not experience the commensurate rise. So only a 10% increase to a city's population can cause a 50% rise in housing prices.
Unbelievable, isn't it? So I'll finish with these stats for you guys. I know I'm throwing a lot of data at you here, but some of this is just like when you really put it all together, as this guy did. He said we got these labor shortages because of all the talent and all the resources going to these infrastructure projects. We've got builders going broke left and right. We're tracking at 30% beneath the housing construction targets that Labor's set. But this is where the perfect storm kicks in. And this is really interesting, and because people have just voted in Australia and we voted Labor, right? As when I say we, as a nation, we elected Labor. So if you're wondering how politics plays a role in these very, very important factors, I'll read you some of these policies and you can tell me whether you think they're going to lead to increase in housing prices, right? On top of everything I just said to you. There's talk that across all the major banks that there's going to be 4 rate cuts in Australia before the end of the year. So we're going to see a 1% reduction in interest rates, right? Now, that obviously means that there's going to be more money because people already can't afford houses, but when they buy houses, they buy them based on what the payments are, right? So when you drop the interest rates, people can afford. So if you own those assets now, we're probably going to see a price increase. From the 1st of January 2026, the Labor policy is 5% deposit and no mortgage insurance for first home buyers, right? So that 15% gap is going to be guaranteed by the Australian taxpayer. So when you lower the deposit to 5%, that is going to create more demand, yes or no? Obviously, yes, right? So they're going to drop the deposits to 5%. The taxpayers are going to cover the difference. On top of that, Labor has instructed the lenders to ignore student debt in loan calculations. Compare the market says, to put that in perspective, if somebody has a $100,000 salary and a student debt that's now ignored, that will increase their buying budget by $56,000 a year to buy a house. If they're on a salary of $120,000 a year, their budget will increase by $95,000 that they can borrow to buy a house, right? Now, on top of this, they have the shared equity scheme, 10,000 first home buyers, where they can co-own the home with the government, 60-40, which is going to increase demand even further. And then on top of that, we have the wealth tax on superannuations over $3 million tabled to come in. What do you think that's going to cause people to do? It's going to cause them to pull money out of super. And where do you think those wealthy Australians who made most of their wealth through property are going to put that money? Property, right? Like that's probably a fairly likely outcome. So if you put it all together, you've got low rates, low interest rates incoming. We have, first home buyers being able to buy properties with 5%. SQM Research said that they believe in 2026 in Australia, as a result of this, we'll see an 8 to 15% increase in property prices in Australia. And guess where most of that's going to be? In the sub $1 million low-end first home buyers market. The exact type of market that are complaining the most about housing affordability. What do you guys make of all of this?
Yeah, well, you know that property prices are going to go up and they're going to continue to go up because basically, like in America, the US can't afford stock market to go down because they generate the majority of their receipts through capital gains tax and through company income taxes. The Australian government is not going to let property prices go down because that's where they generate the majority of their receipts. So they're going to continue to push the prices of property. And there's no chance that the supply side economics can level out. There's no chance that the builders and the developers can bring on more supply, or even the regulations can be taken away in order to bring on more supply at the rate that is going to outpace the demand. The demand is going to continue to outpace the supply. And so property prices are going to continue to go up. And anyone who thinks that we're going to see a 40% crash or anything like that is just not thinking about it the right way.
Unless, Mark, because obviously if they're going to have to build another Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne in the next 40 years, just purely from an infrastructure point of view, there's going to be nobody to build houses, right?
Yeah.
Unless they stop immigration. It's not a racist thing. It's just, unless you put a lid on this for a bit and let the country breathe, we're gonna have a real problem.
The property prices have to go up to kind of support the builders and the developers to continue to like the money. People often say the greedy builders and the greedy developers, and it's unfair, but they're not entirely wrong. The builders and developers have to make a margin. So the people that are going to make money from this increased demand are going to be the builders and the developers, because they're going to have more demand, but they have to make a margin. Like, they don't have a choice. They can't do the job for love, right? So yes, the builders and developers will be beneficiary to this demand, but it's not like they're causing the thing that I think people have wrong is they're not the ones causing the increase in the prices. It's the policy that you've just outlined that's causing the rise in the prices.
And Mark, I think there's two groups that I think have escaped the wrath of the Australian people. Everyone's pointed builders and developers, but I saw a report this week that the realestate.com, Australians spent $1.2 billion on advertising property this year. Although the number of ads has fallen, their profits are skyrocketing. And the amount of money that real estate agents get paid for the work they do, in my opinion, is outrageous in the world that we live in with technology. When you think about the cost of real estate agents, you think about the transaction costs for advertising in this country for this asset class, and marketing property, where property marketers are getting $30,000 to $50,000 for an off-the-plan home. Where's all the outrage about that?
The people, like it's, and I'm sure Eric's got a bunch of comments that he can add, or I'll let him go next. But I sold property for 15 years. I can tell you the people that are going to get rich as the property prices start to boom are going to be the developers, going to be the builders, going to be the real estate agents. They're the ones that are going to generate the most cash from all this activity.
People selling shovels in the gold rush,
right? But I just want people out there to understand that they're opportunists. They're somebody's going to take that opportunity, whether it's whether the builder that's building pro bono or someone's going to step in and take that profit, take that opportunity, right? I want people to understand that it's the government's policy that are leading to this continuation of this flywheel, because at the moment, I don't know if they think that, whether they do or not, I don't know if they think if they have a choice, because where else are they going to get the productivity to support spending?
I've said it for a long time. In my opinion, what will happen is more property will be held in less hands, right? So you're going to have multiple people that will own multiple properties, right? Like, I just keep buying more property. I'm not selling property. I'm talking about building things and trying to keep things. And the reason why that is because the exact reason what you just said, Adam, right? Another one here, labor, right? This was an REA article this week. Labor government's confident and ambitious on building 1.2 million homes by 2029. That's I guess their target. Yet the Property Council of Australia is predicting a shortage of 462,000 of those 1.2 million homes, on top of what you just said, right? Which is, again, basic supply and demand principles. And then the senior economist of REA came out and said, regardless, right, said homeowners should expect a further price growth in the years ahead. So it all makes sense when you're saying REA listings, their revenue's gone up, but listings have come down, because people are sitting on their hands going, why am I going to sell? Because if I got to sell, I got to buy in the same market. You sold, you've left the country, done. But if you're selling to buy in the same market, the costs of what you just said, the agent fees, the marketing fees, and then to buy in the same market, and then you got stamp duty implications, right? Stamp duty, what's stamp duty doing? It's doing this, right? So people are sitting on their hands going, oh, well, I got a $2 million house, or I got $1 million house. I'm just going to sit on it, because in the same article, it's saying that there's a good chance by 2030, which is 5 years, not even 5 years, 4.5 years, right? But well, let's call it 5 years if it's mid 2030. Some of the increases that can be seen: Sydney, 61%, Brisbane, 68%, Adelaide, 75%, Perth, 66%. Like, these are astronomical numbers, because we've just doubled in the last 5 years, give or take 5 to 6 years during COVID. So in my opinion, right, it is a scenario where there's so much pressure being put on real estate, and that has nowhere, in my opinion, but to go up. How much by? We don't know. Different areas are going to go up by different amounts. In these numbers, they're anticipating Melbourne to go up in the same amount of time by 17%. That's a quarter of what some of these other areas are going up. So there's macroeconomics, but there's also microeconomics on what's happening in different areas. Now, another thing people don't see when you own multiple property, we're not just talking about the people that own their owner-occupied house. When you own multiple property, there's a thing called land tax. Land tax is a massive, massive revenue generator that you're paying every year, depending on how much real estate that you own, right? I'd love to actually do some research around that dollar amount, but land tax is based on the value of a property. I get my land tax bills.
Not just that, it's also the aggregate value of the property you hold. I got a $60,000 land tax bill when I went to sell a bunch of properties, because when the solicitor registered them, they registered them in a different way, and because I owned them in a trust and my aggregate value was over a certain amount, I had an extra $60,000 to pay.
Correct, right? And this is where, when you do own multiple properties, you want to get legal advice around ownership, structures. Because structure is very, very important. But it's just, again, it's more revenue. And this is why I said, right, on the last podcast, anyone that voted Labor, in my opinion, right, is doing themselves, I shouldn't even say this. I can't really go back on it, right? I think there's going to be, right, that there's an injustice, right? I shouldn't say Labor, right? Anyone that's in the political spectrum at the moment, right? Doesn't matter who you're voting for. Prices are going up, in my opinion, in the property space. And those of you that are sitting there complaining about housing prices, if you were to take some time and read these policies prior to voting, right, you get a bit more of an understanding on how it's going to affect your pocket, rather than voting the way you vote because it's the way your parents vote, or it's just the way you voted the whole time, right? Have a think about what that's going to reflect. Because I look at it and go, when we had Pauline Hanson on and she's like, we're going to slash immigration, as a property owner, and where a lot of my wealth is being built through property, that's not great for me, right? No. So that person's not going to get my vote, right? So it's, you got to really think about these things.
You got to go ahead, mate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think like none of us here on this panel would necessarily benefit if property prices were to go down. I just want it to be clear that we are not calling for property prices to go down. But if you have a good look at Labor's policies, right, you realize that the only option, because their policies aren't so good in other areas, their only option is for them to lean heavily on the property market continuing to rise pretty rapidly, right? I guess what we're trying to say is that it would be great to have a more balanced economy and policies that are a little bit more balanced, so that we were extracting more ROI from our resources, more ROI from our tech sector, more ROI from other areas, so that we didn't have to rely so heavily on property. And the other wrinkle is, okay, if we're relying so heavily on property, be certain that it's going to mean that they're going to continue to increase the taxes on property. Stamp duty is going to continue to rise. Capital gains tax could get worse. Unrealized gains tax could come in. They're going to continue to raise land tax. There was a statistic in today's ABC report that investors are fleeing Victoria because of the rise in property taxes. So yeah, property is rising, but they're also taxing us as property rises at the same time, right? And we've put this out there many times that the amount of tax, or the from a new home and land, the amount that the government collects from one form of government or another, local government, state government, or federal government, is something like 45%. 45% of the purchase price, at least on the land, right? This I can assure you, at least on the land, is going into the government's hands. So of course it's in their best interest to continue to push the price on property, because they continue to make revenue from it. I guess all we're advocating for, because we're all property guys as well, we want the property market to be strong and healthy, but we want there to be a more balanced mix of policies, so that Australia is also, benefiting from our resources and our industry and everything.
It's not a one-legged table.
And we don't want to just stop immigration either, so the property prices crash. That's not the solution either.
The piper must get paid at some point, and having a market that's on a tear is never good, because the flip side of that also isn't, markets cycle around Australia. They don't all go up evenly, and when they capitulate pretty hard in some places as well. So when you pop the balloon in some of these places, I've been involved in a few of these areas, it happens pretty quick. And back to your point, Adam, about who the aggregate winners is the people selling the picks and shovels, the agents, the project marketers, the builders. They'll have a field day with this. Yeah. They'll just be going, oh, great. And they'll push valves way past, because they've got to pay the marketers a shit ton more, because the demand's on the investment market. It's just going to be, it's only, put it this way, it's only a scam if you're not involved.
Yeah, there's a different level of wealth. Like, I don't know too much about other markets, right? Like, I rely heavily on the Gold Coast market. Now, a friend of ours, a mutual friend of all of ours, right, Carson, went to a real estate event in Brisbane, and there was a couple top-notch economists there, and they were having a chat. And I'm like, so what did they say? And he's like, one of the main comments the economist said, is the Gold Coast, right, which used to be a place where people could come and buy an affordable property and live that kind of lifestyle, will be in future a place for the rich, right, that will play, live, have their lifestyle, have their boats. Because he's like, we're restricted on land. When you look at the Gold Coast, we're stuck between mountains and beach. You can't really create more land, right? Shannon and Carson, what they're trying to find, right, land on the Gold Coast, they're not even looking in those areas anymore. They have to go outside of those areas. So there's still plenty of land in between Gold Coast and Brisbane. Logan is an example. North Brisbane. So there's still big growth pockets in those areas. But let me tell you, Gold Coast over the last 5, 6, 7 years, you're talking there's one per floor unit selling for $12 million, $15 million. Penthouses for sale for 20, like there's one in Burleigh Heads, $22 million. Like, this is unheard of money around here. And people are buying. Greya, they just launched one of their projects in Broadbeach, right? Probably a B grade site, not an A grade site. It's not on the beach. It's in Broadbeach. I would rate it as a B grade site. First weekend, $18 million sold off the plan through social media and a bit of buzz on their opening night. Like, the question is, everyone goes, who can afford it? Who can afford it? There's people out there with money, right, that are buying these properties, and they're coming, in my opinion, to the Gold Coast because other than, the rain that we've been having, you've got the sunshine, you've got lifestyle, you've got restaurants. It's a different, like I see my parents, they're here right now. They love every minute of it here. If it wasn't for my sister that lived back home, they would probably move here because of the lifestyle. They're going for walks every day. They're going to the cafe. That's the lifestyle people actually want. And it's an unfortunate thing that is a reality, because I've got friends and I've got acquaintances and people that I work with that used to live on the Gold Coast that are now living out north, half an hour, commuting every day. And this is the reality, because what was once affordable for them is now not affordable, and it's affordable for somebody else. And is it fair? Is it not fair?
Yeah, I think you got to cut through these markets as well. Like they're not sensationalist, but they're headlines nonetheless. But if you follow a young influencer online now in the property sector, you'll need to dissect the shitholes around Australia that haven't gone up in 25 years. So, I mean, there are places that will not go up 60% in the next 5, 10, 15 years. They'll remain shitholes. People can still go and buy them, and they are affordable. So I think there's also that side to it as well. But, a sweeping statement to say that property overall, and that's what I said before, when this bubble burst, and I've been involved when I did 130 odd townhouses up in Toowoomba, when that market shut itself, there was still a shitload of demand on housing, but that market capitulated. The second largest regional city in Australia or Queensland, I can't remember, this Toowoomba, Townsville, and that market, when it shut itself massively. And that lower end of the market is not a great place to play in, especially when we're selling stuff at 345, 370. You're paying 30 grand to the marketers to offload the books, and the valves are being fuck kicked out of them. So trust me, I know that low end of the market well. And so you just be very careful if you're thinking to go in there and become a developer in that low end of that market, because when that thing shits itself, it shits itself fast.
James, that's a really important point, right? Like from 1981 to like 2020, interest rates were coming down from, I've said this multiple times, from 17% to 0, right? So it's very easy for that rising tide to lift all boats, right? As interest rates coming down, all property can kind of go up across the board. Eric just alluded to a really important point, Gold Coast being what Gold Coast is, and you just alluded to another point. If interest rates are headed up over the long term, which I think they are, the markets that are going to continue to do well is where the money's at, like the markets like Gold Coast. And these other markets are not going to do as well as they've done over the last 20 years. They could stay flat for the next 20 years. So if property is your game, you really need to make sure that you're investing in the markets that are going to do well and benefit from where the people are moving to and the people have money. And, following Shannon and Carson, I think, is one of the best things you could do, because that's exactly their strategy, right? If they can't get into Gold Coast because there's no more land, where is the next place that people with money are going to want to live in order for them to capitalize from the demand in that area?
And very important point. Just something that before I wrap it up, about market cycles, about getting educated, following Carson Shannon, joining the community, the free community. Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, they're not all on at the same time. They don't all come off at the same time. But even though you'll have this demand on housing, there'll still be cycles that need to be adhered to. I mean, look at Melbourne now, Mark. You know more about Melbourne market than anyone, but Docklands, inner city unit apartments, should be fucking mad to put any money in those things. There's an oversupply, a glut, but there are some, so that there's pockets within pockets and markets in markets. So
in Melbourne now, Melbourne's the time, and Eric was saying this a couple of months ago, but Melbourne's the time. Now's the time that you want to be looking in some of those blue chip suburbs, like Elwood and Caulfield and those suburbs, because I reckon they'll always come back strong.
One of my best mates, right, moved from Melbourne to the Gold Coast. He owned a 1-bedroom unit, and I forget, it was an inner city suburb, a very, very popular suburb. You'll know it. I forget the exact suburb. He owned it for 10 years. He bought it off the plan, 1-bedroom apartment, right? He sold it about 18 months ago for the same price that he bought it for 10 years prior.
Minus the stamp duty, minus the stamp duty, minus the rates, minus the this, minus the that. So he's going backwards.
So there's markets within markets, right? And again, what James said prior is getting educated, listening to podcasts like this. Go follow Shannon and Carson, Unemployable Property, free Facebook group. They talk about all this as well in the land space. There's just so much. There's a wealth of information out there. Like Carson, he goes to these events, right, and listens to the economists. I do. I know Adam has. I'm sure Mark and James have. And this is what you do to get comfortable and educated in an area.
So Eric, that's a Facebook group. There's a few thousand people in there, a couple thousand people in there.
No, there's we're creeping on 1,400, but we just launched it like 5 weeks ago. So
1,400.
It's just organically, growing. And there's some people, there's some fresh newbies in there that know absolutely nothing. There's people in there that are moving and shaking, that are seasoned veterans. There's people in there with money that want to invest. There's people in there looking for deals. There's people in there with deals. It's an unbelievable Facebook community. Yeah.
Like get in there, guys. One thing I just want to close this off on. I just want to touch on one thing Mark said about voting Labor. Look, I want to be clear. Liberals tried to buy votes with boosting property as well. So like both sides of the aisle this past election were trying to buy votes by giving incentives to buy property.
It's that time of year again at Unemployable, where we're opening up our Unemployable business coaching program. It's over a 12-month period, and with that, you get private one-on-one coaching, group coaching, as well as private and live events throughout the year. You could get private coaching with me, and not only me, but our panel of experts that we have put together. These panel of experts have been in our network and are the exact people that we use in our business successes. People from branding, sales, marketing, our lawyers, our accountants, everyone that has helped build our businesses, you have access to. If this sounds of interest, go to www.unemployable.com.au/coaching and register your interest to see if it's a fit for you and us. Hope to see you there.
But what concerns me, and what James touched on here, is that this boom of 8 to 15%, it's all through financial engineering. Underlying productivity, wage growth is nothing to do with this. This is all to do with dropping the deposit amounts from 10 to 5 and having the Fed, the federal government, the taxpayer support you. It's all about the interest rates coming off by 1%. It's all policy controlled stimulus, right? It's not an underlying growth. And so that to me is when has the government ever mismanaged stuff? Like a lot. so where this money's coming from, in my opinion, where Eric's saying, I just keep buying property. Eric's on the asset. This is what the problem in Australia is that there's the rich who own the assets. And as all this goes on, they're just getting richer and richer and reinvesting on the flywheel. But for the people trying to get on the flywheel, at 8 to 15% increase next year in 2026, you think of what that means in terms of deposits. So the government's answer, I'm not going to say Labor, I'm going to say the government, because the Liberals probably would have done something similar, is, let's just cut the amount of deposit required and then tell lenders that they can't consider HEX debt in it. I mean, it's just artificial. And this is so problematic. And the young people, you guys who drop comments in our YouTube channel underneath people like Eric and say, oh, you boomers, and you call me a boomer, you guys who are going to benefit from this sugar hit of a 5% rate drop and a drop in interest rates, and you go in, you manage to get your property and it goes up, the next generation of kids are going to come through when they reverse these policies because it didn't work. They're going to, it's all right for that generation who got 5% deposits and government backed and, HEX debt was ignored. When that's all unwound, you're now the new boomers. So enjoy that when it comes to you.
But Adam, you touch on an interesting point, right? Because if the currency is being debased at 8% a year, and then you've got interest rates at 5-6% a year, that's 14%, right? So if the thing that you've got to keep in mind is if you are lucky enough to be able to afford that property, if your property is not growing at more than 14% a year, you're actually still going backwards. And that's why, in my opinion, you've got so many people that are looking at things like cryptocurrency and technology and trading stocks, because they're like, you know what, fuck it. There's no way, there's no guarantee that my property is going to go up 15% a year. So I'm better off buying Dogecoin, or I'm better off buying Bitcoin, because at least that's growing at 30% a year. It's rational. It's not silly. It's rational. If they keep debasing currency by 8-9% a year, plus the interest rate of 5-6% a year, your hurdle rate to get ahead is over 15%. How many areas in Australia are going to go up 15% a year?
That's the M2 money supply I'm holding up in the last year. The amount of money
that
being pumped into the system. Look at that. For
It's-
those of you who can't see it on Spotify, it's just like a hockey stick.
That's
just
another
grab
debate we can have, right?
One piece in there, and this is not to take away the fact that it's a runaway train with the debasement, inflation, all those arguments. I used to live in Bondi, and there's a 3-bedroom that they called semi-detached, and just got turned over. It made the newspaper, right? And funnily enough, someone was ripping up the carpet. I think it was 1963 when they put newspaper all over the timber floors. Fucking house affordability crisis. This is 1963 or 64, whenever it was. Same headline wheeled out. Went out, 40, about 60 years later. Same headline, same issue.
But different facts, James. Different
Correct.
facts.
It's always been an issue. It's just that they just.
But what
now the
James,
gap though is that where you price that gap and you put metrics around what a affordability crisis is.
So I wasn't denying. I'm just saying this has always been an issue.
So the way I look at it is this, right? Like, you go first because I have a question for you.
Yeah, it's almost a smokes and mirrors facade, right? Because yes, this has always been the way, and the average person just has one home, right? The majority of people have one home. Where there's not, Eric is in the top 1% of people in Australia that are acquiring multiple homes. Okay, so the average person has one home. So the average person, they bought their home for 200,000. The boomer bought the home for 200,000. Now it's 2 million. But all they've done is keep pace with the cost of living and inflation. Haven't outperformed it, right? So Eric's outperformed it because he's been able to manufacture growth through his property developments and by buying smart. Eric has outperformed it because he's using intelligent leverage, right? Yeah. But the average person doesn't outperform it. So they're selling you this great Australian dream to own your home. And yes, that's better than not having a home because you're just going backwards. You don't own a home. But the great Australian dream is to stay level with inflation. That's not a very good dream, in my opinion. And that's why we talk about these ways to add value through property or to buy Bitcoin or to do e-commerce or whatever, because we want you to outpace that money printing. I mean, that's optimization, right?
I got a question for each one of you, and I'll answer mine first. And the question is, we've sat here and talked about the problem for the last half an hour. So if people want to get into the property market, right, if that, in your opinion, if that's a market that you would get into or not, what should they do? So in my mind is you could sit there and say, I can't afford it. I'm priced out of the market. I'll never be able to, own my own home. Get that thought of owning your own home, out of your mind, right? Use it as a vehicle to generate cash flow, to do whatever you want with. So what I would be doing is, if I'm on $100,000 a year, right, and I can't afford a property, and my friend's on $100,000 a year and they can't afford their property, and another friend's, on $100,000 a year and can't afford a property, collaborate, right? Work together, sign up for, Unemployable property on the Facebook group, buy a property course. Like there's hundreds of them out there. Learn how to manufacture equity in property, rather than going, I'm just going to buy a unit and I'm going to hold on to it and I'm just going to pay the interest on it. And like my parents did over 35 years and pay double the amount of interest than what the actual property is worth over 30 years time. Like Mark said, you're not outpacing the market. You're just staying with the market. Try to outpace the market and manufacture equity and collaborate in doing so. Because let me tell you, if there's 3 people and there's $300,000 a year in income and you're going to collaborate on a property, someone might have a little bit more money. The other guy has no deposit. This guy saves a shit ton of money. Collaborate together, work it amongst yourselves. Just get in the market, do something, right? And look at it as a business rather than, I'm never going to be able to own my own property again. Because the reality is, someone that's on an average wage will never be able to save their way to owning a property and a deposit, because you will just miss out every time. You'll save up $100,000, and guess what? You now need 150. You'll save up to 150. Guess what? You now need 200, and that is unrealistic. So collaborate together and learn. There's so much information. Like you've got so many people out there, these buyers agents that are putting out some amazing content as well. We're doing amazing with Unemployable property, but there's guys like Jack Henderson, right, that's putting out amazing content. Right. In my opinion, from a buyer's agency point of view and giving you guys helps and tips. So James, Mark, Adam, for the person that's listening to this going, yeah, well done. You just sold your $7 million unit that you've doubled in price and your factories and this and that, right? And Mark, yeah, you've sold 3,000 blocks of land. So you're part of the problem anyways, because you were the one making 30 grand a pop on all of those, right? Everyone's going to sit there and have that headspace. And I honestly, I do feel sorry for a lot of people, right? The people like teachers and nurses that are on average incomes that are like, this is not fair. If you're talking to them, what is your opinion, Mark?
I'll go. I'll take this one
Okay.
first, because then Adam and like Mark had a big we'll call it 180 in his life in the last 4 or 5 years. So he can probably talk a bit more to that, and Adam also. But I mean, we've actually had this same question probably about 5 or 6 months ago on the pod. It was asked what we do, and again, I'll just education, been around the network of people, idea, capital, execution. It's under the hat. And Adam will probably talk to that as well. But, the community were on a private call last night for the paid property guys. There's guys in there with cash, and there's guys in there for the first time going, how do I get to that guy with the cash? And it's about being educated. I mean, the only reason that we're in the position that we're doing what we're doing, Eric, at the moment, I use that as a specific point in case we wouldn't learn how to do it. I mean, you start off cutting your teeth on something small, move up to larger block, with more risk involved in it, and get educated. But you can sit there and whinge about it. It's certainly not going to be the outcome. So education and proximity, and work out who's got the money, and who's going to do the work, and put a JV together. And that's what we've done. So I mean, that's
Mark,
what I would say. And Mark's
thanks,
instead.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the type of person that has decided that it is property, well, actually, let's go back a step. The first thing I'd say is there's a lot of myths out there that are being sold to us, or a lot of propaganda or talking points that are being sold to us, and you got to think, what are they really trying to achieve with that? Like the myth that the dream is to own your own home. Like I mean, there's so many anecdotes of people that own their own home, and then they're like, what the fuck is this? Is this all there is? I'm locked into a mortgage for 30 years. And when you get there, you realize it. So I'd say let go of those myths. Another myth that we're kind of experiencing at the moment is, that women can do everything. They can raise 3 kids, they can have the perfect body, they can run the e-commerce business, and they can have an investment portfolio. You can do them all, but not at the same time, right? Like you can't be there for kids. And anyway, it's a separate topic, but there's all these macro propaganda lines that are out there. Don't be so quick to just believe what you hear. Question the reality as it's being spoken. If it is, though, if you've decided, you know what, it's not stocks, it's not crypto, it's property, that's where I want to generate wealth, then I would suggest to do what Eric's doing. Or I think the best strategy to cut your teeth to get started in property and manufacture growth is to buy a property with an old rundown house where there's room to subdivide the block on the back, right? You obviously need town planners, you obviously need an architect, drafty to make sure that's possible. You need to go and do it in an area where it is possible, but you subdivide the block at the back, you sell off the block at the back, you renovate the block at the front, and then you've got this asset where you've created equity in and above whatever the difference between your mortgage and your deposit is. I think that is like one of the best bread and butter strategies to get started in. And then I would say if it's not property, if it doesn't have to be property, I'd honestly be studying long and hard on what are the things that can outperform that 15% hurdle rate per year that we've been talking about, whether it be investing in companies on the S&P 500 or in the Australian stock market or Bitcoin or gold or these things. Explore things that, based on the environment that we're heading into, have the potential to outperform that hurdle rate. And if you're young, if you're in your 20s, you need to be putting all that money that you have into yourself and educating yourself on as many different things as possible to try and work out where your wheelhouse is.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll talk. Your question was specifically property, though, right, Eric? What I would do in property?
Yes. Yeah.
So look, I don't hate Australian real estate. I don't like the underlying direction of where it's all going, right? Like as I've said, but I'll share a couple of quick stories of because the thing that blocks the average punter sitting there, because I've read the comments okay for you, Seppo boy, you know, and okay for you, Bugs Bunny, you know, which they call me, and having all your, you know, like I get it all day, right? As if it was given to us, right? So if you're sitting there right now and you feel like, you know, you're not going to get on the ladder and the ladder was pulled up behind the rich and the bus is left, I want you to listen. The first thing you got to understand is that you must get past this idea that you need money to make money in property. That is number one. Everybody who doesn't have money is living in that reality and they believe that money is at a scarcity. It is not. There is a mountain of money available. The problem is there's a shortage of Australians that want to do anything but pick the lowest hanging fruit, right?
Or think outside the box. My first property was no money down, no deposit.
Correct. And people going, oh yeah, that I can hear them right now, Mark, going, oh, but Mark, that was back then. That's not real today, right? Now listen up. Fuck off with that. That's bullshit, right? There's a young guy on the Gold Coast that I deal with. I won't say who it is, but he's a smart young guy. He's in his 20s. And I'll share one quick strategy, right? Now, you can say this is a good strategy, bad strategy. You can tell me, oh, that's illegal, whatever. He's done it. He's done it over and over and over. And he's a multimillionaire from doing it, right? He goes out, he spends his weekends while his mates are going to the football. He goes around and looks at new developments that are coming up. He finds ones that he believes are in amazing areas. He negotiates to buy one that's in the last stage of developments. They might be right, like doing 4 stages of townhouses. He negotiates the property he wants in the last stage of release. He negotiates to, sorry, I'm just going to have to move here because my computer is going to crash. He negotiates to get into the last stage release. He uses a deposit bond. Sorry. Okay, we're good. He uses a deposit bond, which is a few $1,000s, and he just rides the capital growth up and banks on the capital growth being there in the future, right? And then if he hasn't got the money, he finds an investor to buy it out, gives the investor a return, on-sells the property, and splits the profits with the investor. For the investor, there's almost no risk because they're lending against a built property at that point of view. It's a first mortgage
purchase. That was negotiated at a very handsome rate.
He negotiated the contract, 18 months of capital growth built in, and he has a deposit bond of a few $1,000s to tie it up in the meantime. And when the time comes, he moves into it, he flips it as under his PPR, pays no tax, shares the profit with the investor, and he's a multimillionaire from doing it. He's done it over and over and over.
That was my second property that I bought, was a block of land, stage 1 of an estate. I basically held it all the way up until it titled. I settled on it, and then I sold it for the uplift, and I pocketed like 80, 90 grand. And then I did the next one. Like that was my second strategy as well.
And don't tell me this doesn't.
You got to do whatever it takes. You just fucking have to
Don't tell me this doesn't work now, because the reason I know this is because he pitched me it as an investor, and he's a finance professional. This guy is a finance professional, works in the finance business. He pitched me this just before I left Australia for a development in Hope Island on the Gold Coast. He said, I found this property. It's well undervalued, in my opinion, with a few interest rate cuts built in. By the time this thing's built in late 2026, I reckon it's going to be worth this. Boom. And this is what, and so that's one. I'll tell you another quick story. Though I own a property, co-own a property in Queensland still. The young guy who found the deal didn't have the money. He rings me up and says, Adam, I need $1.2 million cash to buy this property. It's 3.5. I need 1.2 million for the deposit and to do some works on it. It's a commercial property, a large commercial property. Here's why I think it'll work. I'll give you your money back in 12 months. Once I use the cash flow from the property, I'm going to do some improvements to it. And so that 1.2 is going to pay for the deposit and some improvements. We'll refinance it in a year. I'll pay you back your 1.2 plus an interest rate of 10% at that time. And then we'll co-own the property. We did that deal. He had no money. He put not 1 cent into that deal. That property was recently valued at $10 million, right? And he got into it for $0, right? And we own that property together, and it has hundreds of thousands of dollars of free cash a year after the debt, right? No money down. And then, of course, we had last week on the pod, we had a young Australian worth $150 million, and his business is helping other people find property. And then he uses the cash flow as an advocate for property, a buyer's advocate, to build his own portfolio, and now he's worth $150 million.
And Andrew Huberman posted something recently. He said, someone told me, and I'm not going to say who it is, and I bet you it was David Goggins, that someone said to him, and I think so much of life is grey and nuanced, right? but this is the one thing that gives me calm in believing that is black and white. He said, there's two types of people in this world. There's winners and there's losers. Losers will make excuses for why shit's happening to them and why they can't make things work. And winners get the same shit handed to them, but they're able to turn that into a positive and go out there and take action on it. If you've gotten to 55 minutes into this podcast, I'm guessing you're part of the winners group. But if you're not, or if you're one of those people that is a keyboard warrior, you know a friend that is a keyboard warrior, send them this podcast and implore that they listen to it from start to finish. Because all you need to do is put yourself in that winners category and you will find a way to get the thing that you want. There is more money and opportunity than ever before in history right now. One last thing. There is so many fucking performance artists popping up on Instagram and Facebook that are complaining about the state of politics and about the state of this and about the state of that and promoting the Greens and promoting Labor this and fuck Liberal that and fuck that. Listen, tune them out. Start, whether it's us or someone else, start following the builders. If you want to be successful, follow the builders and not the complainers.
And one thing I want to add to that, and I said this on the call yesterday because one of the questions was like, so when do you guys actually start looking for properties? Like, do you carve out time? Do you wake up at 4 a.m. and then do the first 2 hours and this type of thing? And I said one thing, because everyone's busy, right?
Don't
Like
overthink
the first thing, right? Like, and I'll put up my hand, right? When I was, how you doing, man? Yeah, good. Busy, right? It's just an automatic, just busy. And we relate to that and going, we don't have time, right? Time feels like it's shorter than it's ever been. We've got less of it, right? And honestly, I feel like that at times. But I think it's because I'm doing a lot of things. I'm building a lot of things. I'm fucking pushing, man, right? Forward, right? Like just brick wall, bam, bam, bam. Let's just keep going, right? I love every minute of it. And my parents being here, right, and seeing me firsthand now, because I've been doing a bit of work from home and they've, trying to do a bit of work from home rather than the office so I can still be there and have it. They're just like, you don't fucking stop. Like I said, this is what I do, right? To live the life that I want, right, on our terms. This is what I do, right? I'm in build phase right now. And I told people yesterday on the call, I go, do one easy thing. Go to your settings, scroll down, click on screen time, and just for the next 10 to 15 minutes, dig into what you're looking at. The amount of data that it shows on here, right? How many, your daily average on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all the fucking bullshit, okay? What you want to be on there is on realestate.com, Mark's podcast, Unemployable, right? Hermosi, these types of things, right? So don't sit there and say you have no time, because I'll tell you right now, everyone that will be listening to this, I shouldn't say everyone, probably about 99.9% of the people, right, me included, waste time on bullshit too, even as busy as we are. Okay,
Eric, that point. It's funny because I was going to mention exactly that thing. One of the big hacks for me this week was Stephen Bartlett on his latest Behind the Diary episode shared that it was Andrew Wilkinson was interviewed, the billionaire Andrew Wilkinson, and he shared an app called Freedom. Yep. And you can just put Freedom social media blocking app. I installed it, game changer. Yep. I can only access social media for 2 hours a day now, and other than that, I can't get into my own social media.
Yeah,
game changer.
Yeah, and there's apps like that. But first of all, go there so you could look in the mirror and call yourself an idiot, right? Because we all do it. Right, but I'm pointing at you that's listening at this right now, because I'm telling you right now, Instagram, scroll hole, TikTok, Facebook, all of us, you'll be amazed and you're going to be like, oh my God. Give you an idea, right? My daily average, right? This is sickening. Some of it's work, but I'll tell you right now, the majority of it's just going to be, right? Scroll holes, 2 hours and 37 minutes.
Confessions of a multi-millionaire,
right? That I'm on any type of social media, whether it's Instagram. I don't have TikTok, so it's either Instagram, right, or Facebook. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm replying to messages, DMs, as Unemployable is growing. I'm spending a bit more time in this platform, but let me tell you, I'm still going. I'm still scrolling. I'm on the toilet just like everybody else. I'm not reading the back of a fucking shampoo bottle, right? I'm scroll hole, right? But that's
relevant when you're in the toilet, Eric. But anyway, go on.
but you know what I mean, right? I'm just being honest, man, right?
I appreciate the honesty, Eric.
Right?
That
We're
takes a lot of
scrolling,
courage.
right? We're scrolling. Next thing you know, right, what should have took you 5 minutes is taking you fucking 14 minutes, and your wife is going, "What the fuck are you doing up there? You're down
That's
the
high,
scroll
bro.
hole."
You need an intervention.
I don't know that it is. You know what? I don't know that it is that high. I think a lot of people are in that situation and they're watching fucking dog videos and they're watching people like if you saw like like the shit that I watch, it's pretty dark. It's like people hurting themselves to the point where they're nearly dead, or people just
Like the
getting
shit
KO'd.
you send me, Adam. Like honestly, like
What the fuck are you watching?
Dude, honestly,
You need an
don't want to see
intervention too, brother.
I need to get a bracelet that says when I die, delete my search history.
right? But the reality is having the confidence to look at yourself in the mirror and go, you know what? Like
Order.
you have time. We all have time. You got to make the time. But first of all, just look at it and go, shit, I've just spent 2 hours today on social media. Let me try and get that down to 1 hour, right? And spend the other hour educating yourself.
Mad respect, Eric, for sharing that. People are watching too much porn and too much social media. And they need to get rid of that shit because it's, especially for young men, it's killing your drive. It's both of those things. And people say it's not a real thing. It's a fucking real thing. The biggest websites in the world are porn, and people are wasting all their time on it. And they're fucking.
And they're your neighbor, and they're your neighbors now. Like
now,
Cyprus does have the odd porn site here.
What's the quote you made? What's the quote you made famous last week, Adam? You can't watch porn and expect to get fucked.
Well, I was saying watching porn and having sex is not the same thing, right? And that's what podcasts are for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's just entrepreneurial porn. You've got to actually go and do shit.
Switch us the fuck off and go do something.
Like this week, I've started now trading, and I'm going to share more about it later, but I've started trading futures using artificial intelligence with a small allocation just to learn something new, right, on crypto. So I've shared it with Mark and Eric in a little chat group going, all right, boys, wish me luck. Let's see how we go. But I'm live. I'm trying it. I'm going to see, right? I'm going to see if we can get an AI to outperform macro Mark. Who knows? You might be out of a job, Mark.
Yeah, we should have a contest. Your AI versus mine.
Totally. But you've actually got to, if you're going to spend time in stuff, do stuff that's productive, but get rid of that other stuff. But that app, guys, honestly, I installed it. Game changer for me. I literally can only access 2 hours a day now.
Just on that, right? I feel like at the moment I'm in one of the most productive spaces that I've ever been in. And if you asked me, Mark, why are you in one of the most productive spaces you've ever been in? I will say that the answer is at the start of 2024, instead of creating goals and objectives, I basically spent my whole new Christmas planning working out, okay, what is everything that's in my life and what do I need to remove? What are the things that I need? And I made a massive list of all the things I need to remove from my life. And I think 18 months later, those decisions and that time spent planning has now paid forward because it's created the space for me to do the things that are making me productive today. And Dom's kind of going through this thing at the moment where, she's trying to work out how to be a more present parent and how parenting's hard. We've only got one kid and we want 3, maybe 4. I'm like, fuck, how are we going to make that happen? And she's going through that same process of elimination, taking all the things away that are going to allow her to go after the things that she really wants. So I think that's a huge point, whoever mentioned that.
Massive.
No more DJ Fisher concerts for her. 100. Take that away. 100%. Man.
Leave that shampoo bottle alone as well.
I said it's better than reading the back of a shampoo bottle. All right.
Yeah. Good. But guys, hopefully that's helpful for you for another week. We will move on from property next week. There's lots I want to share, and I know you guys got lots to share that's going on in our business lives as well at the moment. A lot of cool stuff that I can share from over here. But stay tuned. We're going to move into more entrepreneurial stuff next week as we move on with the pod. I just want to also just say thanks for the support. Last Friday's pod, 1,000 people. 1,000 people. It was we did, it's already broken 10,000 views, which is a small rock concert, right? Like if you saw that many people, it's up. That was like a 300% increase over our normal viewership last week, which was great. So thank you for the support, guys. If you're sharing the
comments.
202 comments,
comments on that,
and half of them were positive. Yeah. So if you did, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry.
I was going to say, if you did share the pod for us, we appreciate it. Please do that if you're finding value in it, because building this audience is what enables us to spread this message of hopefully positivity and solutions, and sometimes hard, tough love. But I want you to know every single one of us on here came from working class families. None of us were given money. Like we all earned it the long, slow, hard way. It wasn't easy. Mark, you were going to say something.
Yeah. Do you guys want an update on that Tesla trade?
Yes, give us the update on the Tesla trade.
Hang on,
it's obviously good, right?
Yeah.
You were dying for this, weren't you?
I just thought about it. Yeah, but no. Hey, look, someone actually asked in the comments. I mentioned my GameStop trade, that I was going long a bunch of GameStop, and if they were to adopt the Bitcoin treasury, that could go from 130,000 to 4 mil. Well, just an update on that, and the reason that we didn't share numbers on it is they haven't announced a Bitcoin treasury yet, and I've slowly been reducing that position size. It's still there, but it's down to about a 60 grand outlay. It's still a moonshot possibility, but at the moment it's looking less likely that they're going to adopt a Bitcoin strategy. So there's an update on that for whoever asked. And yeah, the Tesla trade that we spoke about is up 181%.
That's amazing.
This
is an example. Yeah.
Would have been what, three and a half weeks now? 3 weeks, I think.
And this is what I mean, guys, about there are other things happening out there. Mark and I a while ago said, we've got a little chat group, right, about this stuff that's separate to property. We're all trying to learn this stuff. So there's Eric and myself and Mark in that chat at the moment. James, if you want to come in, you're more than welcome. But we share information. And one of the things Mark and I spoke about a while ago was a company called Metaplanet. And Metaplanet's the best performing stock in the Japanese stock market. It's basically adopted the strategy playbook, which is MicroStrategy, which is the best performing stock in the world in the last 3 or 4 years. And they basically just copied it. I was just looking this morning. Metaplanet's up 251% the last 6 months. And we, got exposure to the trade just through YouTube, right? These types of returns are out there, just absolutely nuts. I spoke with a guy.
It's too late, Adam. It's too late.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah.
You can't make another 180. It's too late. And this is the mindset that you got to get, that we all got to get out of
these opportunities.
Right. That scarcity mindset of
and being open.
If you really want to turn your $50,000 home, if you need $150,000 home deposit and you got 50 grand, there's ways out there that you can turn that 50 grand into 150. They're going to take some learning, and they're going to take some failures and whatnot. But you don't have to risk it all in one shot. But there's ways out there where you can, it's knowledge. Knowledge is potential power.
Catch the same train as Emmanuel Macron and Serbs, those guys. Work it out pretty quick.
You know what? You got to realize, I was on Mother's Day, right? A couple of days before Mother's Day, as you do, go out, get a gift, buy a card, and I'm at one of the news agencies at Pacific Fair here on the Gold Coast, getting a card, and I'm in line, right? There's a few people in front of me. And I'm thinking other people are getting cards, but the 3 people that were in front of me literally are in line buying lotto, and I can't help but overhear them, right? So this lady's boom, 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 $150 on the lotto, another one $50 on the lotto, another around $20 on the lotto, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, there's people out there that are spending money on a hope that they're going to win, right? The 2 million or the 5 million or the 100 million jackpot. And that is the mindset that needs to change. If you're one of those people that are sitting there playing the lotto, right, and playing those numbers every week, put some of that energy into something else, just a little bit of that energy into learning, right? Because the reality is this: right? What Mark is doing to a lot of people is would be like gambling, right? Like it's a high gamble. We're all gambling, right? We're gambling on our property deals. We're gambling on,
Gambling
Mark's
across
gambling
the
on
road.
Tesla, right? But it's very, very different when you're gambling on something that you have some control over, that you've educated yourself, right? It's not by accident that Mark has made 181%. It's not an accident that he's now taking his 100 or 150K position, right? And he's bringing it down to 60, and maybe over time that's going to be down to nil, because he's done his education and going, shit, they're actually not going to release the news that I once thought. Let me reallocate that money. That education perspective is so strong.
And it's free.
Yeah, 100%.
It's free.
Yeah, never been so cheap.
Yeah, it's never been, the cost of education has never been so cheap. The world has never been more accessible. Like, I did a deal. I showed you guys offline in our chat what I've been doing. And I said, let me come back to you in a month when I've done this for a bit. But, I put some money with a group out of Dubai this week. And I'm like, it happened because I went to a meetup, and I just went to meetup.com, went to a Bitcoin meetup, got chatting to somebody. That made me say something over here that got me a referral over here. And the next thing, I'm on a phone call to Dubai, and I'm doing signed up with these guys as a client. And, these guys are doing 20% a month return. And I'm just like, starting with a small allocation. I control all the money. There's no access to the funds. But the reason I'm mentioning this is the world we now live in. Through meetup.com, which is a website, and through the internet and through social media, you can now connect with and learn, and the opportunities are unbelievable. But if you've got this closed mindset that, it's the world, the ship has sailed and the world is closed only to the rich, you're done. So hopefully that's not going to be our audience. So guys, thank you for watching another week. What's that, Mark? Yeah.
My daughter's at the door wanting to come in. I'm just saying, come in, sweetie.
Come in, Frankie. She'll be a hit. Where's Frankie? We'll get Frankie to take us out.
Frankie's already placing deals.
Yeah. Is Frankie going to come and say hello?
She's going to be the kid in the schoolyard going, hey, give me $50. I'll place it. I'll give you 100 next week.
You want to work, sweetie? You want to work with Daddy?
Hey, Frankie.
She always comes in and she's like, Daddy, I want to work. Daddy, I want to work. I'm like, you've got plenty of time to work. Just have fun for now.
She's funny. Adorable.
She's amazing.
Hey, Frankie. All right, guys, with that, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you for lending Mark to us, Frankie. We appreciate it. And we'll see you guys soon. And guys, remember, like, subscribe, and comment if you dare. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now, guys. Bye. Hey there. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.